Welcome back, everyone, to the deep dive. You know, we love to get into the nitty-gritty of the topics you all send in, so today we're tackling something that's, well, pretty crucial no matter what field you're in, emotional intelligence.
EQ, right?
Yeah, EQ. And you sent over some super interesting stuff on this, especially these excerpts from Pathway to Work. I gotta say, this deep dive is already shaping up to be a good one.
It seems like a really practical take.
For sure. It promises to really break down how EQ impacts everything from writing a killer resume to navigating all the, long-term stuff in your career.
It's not just about feeling good, it's about using those feelings to your advantage.
Exactly. And speaking of feeling good, I was pretty surprised by one thing Pathway to Work pointed out right off the bat. It claims studies are showing EQ as a stronger predictor of success than, get this, IQ.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's interesting. It definitely challenges the traditional view of, what matters in the workplace.
Totally. Kind of makes you think, huh?
It does. I mean, we always hear about the importance of IQ, but maybe EQ is the secret sauce we've been overlooking.
Right. Maybe all this time it's been more about how you handle yourself, how you interact with others, rather than just raw brain power.
Pathway to Work really dives into that. It doesn't just define emotional intelligence. It emphasizes applying those skills in real-life scenarios to help you succeed.
So it's not just some vague concept, it's about putting it into action.
Exactly. And they break it down into 5 core components: self-awareness, self-regulation, empathy, motivation, and social skills.
5. Wow. Okay, so it's more than just being friendly and understanding people's feelings, right?
Right. These are essential tools for success, not just, soft skills that are nice to have.
Gotcha. So let's start unpacking these 5 components, shall we? Pathway to Work kicks things off by diving into self-awareness, am I right?
Yep. That's the foundation.
Okay, so knowing your own emotions, strengths, and weaknesses. How does this play out in, the real world, especially when it comes to your career?
Well, think about it like this. You're at the beginning, choosing a career path, or even just figuring out what kind of work gets you excited. That's all about self-awareness.
So, are you someone who loves being creative, or do you prefer a more, structured environment?
Exactly. Or maybe you thrive working on a team, or perhaps you prefer to work independently. That self-knowledge is super important for finding a fulfilling career path that aligns with your strengths and, what you actually enjoy doing.
Makes sense. If you don't know what you're good at, it's going to be tough to find a job that actually, fits. But honestly, it's not always easy to be that introspective, especially when you're just starting out.
It can be tough.
What are some practical tips from Pathway to Work that can help with that self-awareness piece?
Well, one suggestion they highlight is to just take some time to reflect on your emotions. What situations get you energized and motivated? What circumstances drain your energy or make you anxious?
Oh, okay. So it's about noticing those patterns.
Yeah, noticing the patterns. It sounds simple, but it can be really revealing.
I can see that. If you notice you always feel stressed out during presentations, maybe public speaking isn't your jam.
Exactly. Or maybe you realize you get a real buzz from brainstorming new ideas, so a creative role might be a better fit.
I like that. So self-awareness is kind of laying the groundwork for making good career choices. But what about when you're in the middle of the job search? That whole process can be an emotional roller coaster.
Oh, yeah, for sure. It could be super stressful. Sending out applications, going on interviews, waiting to hear back. It can be a lot.
Totally. And Pathway to Work brings up this other crucial component of EQ, self-regulation, right?
Yes, that's all about managing your emotions,
Yeah.
especially when things get tough.
So not letting rejection get you down or, feeling overwhelmed by the whole process.
Precisely. Pathway to Work specifically talks about how important self-regulation is during the job hunt to avoid burning out.
Okay, so how do you actually, stay grounded and motivated during that process? What does Pathway to Work say about that?
Well, one of the things they suggest is to regularly remind yourself why you're excited about the work you're pursuing.
So don't lose sight of the big picture.
Exactly. It's easy to get bogged down in the logistics, like tailoring your resume and prepping for interviews, and forget about the passion that drove you to apply in the first place. Pathway to Work encourages you to reconnect with that passion. Visualize yourself succeeding in the role and use that to fuel your efforts.
Like a pep talk for when you start doubting yourself. I dig that.
It can be really helpful.
But self-regulation isn't all about staying positive, right? It's also about, managing your time and energy effectively.
Absolutely. Pathway to Work emphasizes the importance of creating a structured job search plan to avoid feeling overwhelmed.
So, setting realistic goals for how many applications you'll send out each week or scheduling time blocks for networking activities.
Exactly. That structure can be so helpful in a situation that can often feel chaotic and, kind of unpredictable. It's like taking control back when there's so many unknowns.
Right. Okay, so we've talked about self-awareness and self-regulation, but job searching isn't just about managing your own emotions, right? You're constantly interacting with other people. So how does EQ play into that?
That's where empathy comes in. Pathway to Work stresses that understanding other people's perspectives, their motivations and priorities, can make networking and interviewing much more effective.
So instead of just focusing on how you can impress them, you're considering what's important to them.
Right. It's about moving beyond self-promotion and genuinely trying to connect with the people you're interacting with.
I like that. Pathway to Work specifically mentions the importance of understanding a manager's priorities. How can that benefit someone during the job search?
Well, Pathway to Work actually poses a question. Why might a manager prioritize certain tasks over others? It encourages you to step outside of your own perspective and think about the factors influencing their decisions.
So they might have deadlines I'm not even aware of. Or maybe pressure from their boss.
Exactly. Maybe they're looking for someone who's really organized because they're juggling a lot of projects. Or maybe they need someone who's a strong communicator because they're dealing with clients all day.
So instead of just listing my accomplishments, I could frame my experience in a way that shows I understand their needs.
Exactly. It's a more, collaborative approach. Instead of just trying to impress them, you're figuring out if there's a good fit on both sides.
Wow, that's a real game changer. So empathy is super important, not just for job searching, but for your whole career, right?
Absolutely. It's about building strong relationships with colleagues, collaborating effectively on projects, and just navigating all those, office dynamics.
I get it.
Yeah.
And it's closely tied to the fourth EQ component, social skills.
You got it. Things like clear communication, active listening, the ability to build rapport with others.
So it's more than just being a people person.
It is. These are real skills that can be developed, and they're essential for success in any workplace.
So EQ isn't just about being in touch with your own emotions. It's about understanding the emotions of others and using that to navigate social interactions effectively.
That's it.
Pretty comprehensive. I'm ready to hear how we can build these EQ muscles. What does Pathway to Work say about that?
Well, hold on. Let's take a quick break first. We'll dive into those strategies for actually developing EQ when we get back. Welcome back, everyone. Before the break, we were talking about those first 4 EQ components: self-awareness, self-regulation, empathy, and social skills. Now let's get into how to actually build those EQ muscles, right?
Yeah, let's get practical. Pathway to Work breaks it down into 3 key areas, right? Self-awareness, empathy, and emotional regulation.
You got it. And I really appreciate how Pathway to Work doesn't just tell us what these skills are. It gives actual advice on how to make them stronger.
Give us the goods. For example, when it comes to self-awareness, they suggest asking yourself things like, what kind of work really gets me excited? Or what situations make me feel totally anxious?
It's all about connecting your emotions to specific situations, not just knowing that you get stressed, but figuring out what actually triggers that stress.
So then you can figure out how to deal with it better.
Exactly. It's like having a user manual for your own emotions.
I love that. Okay, what about empathy? That seems trickier, How do you actually practice understanding other people's perspectives, especially at work?
It can be tough, but Pathway to Work has this great example. They ask, why might a manager prioritize certain tasks over others? Basically, they want you to step outside your own head and consider what might be influencing someone else's decisions.
Oh, so instead of thinking, why isn't my project getting more attention, I should try to figure out what else is on their plate.
Right. Maybe they have crazy deadlines you don't even know about.
Yeah.
Or pressure from their own boss.
So it's about remembering everyone has their own stuff going on.
Exactly. They can really change how you interact with people.
So active listening, being curious about their perspective, that's how you build empathy, right?
It's a big part of it. Pathway to Work emphasizes really paying attention, not just to the words someone's saying, but their tone of voice, body language, all of it.
Oh, so it's more than just nodding and saying, uh-huh.
Way more. It's about asking clarifying questions to make sure you really get it, and then maybe even summarizing what you've heard to confirm you're on the same page.
That makes so much sense.
And remember, empathy doesn't mean you have to agree with someone. It's about understanding where they're coming from, even if you don't see things the same way.
Okay, that's helpful. Now, what about emotional regulation? Pathway to Work talks about using calming techniques like deep breathing, especially before stressful situations. Any other tips for our listeners on that front?
Oh, one thing to remember is that everyone experiences emotions differently. What works for one person might not work for someone else.
So it's about finding what works for you.
Exactly. It's about building a toolkit of strategies and practicing them so you're ready when things get tough.
Love the toolkit idea. What else can we put in there besides deep breathing?
Mindfulness meditation is a great one. It's about paying attention to your thoughts and feelings without judging them. That can help you get better at noticing what you're feeling and, manage it.
I have heard good things about mindfulness. What about something more in the moment, like if you're, right about to lose it?
Oh, for that, I like the SWP method. It's an acronym, so it's easy to remember.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Hit me with the acronym.
So S is for stop. Just stop what you're doing. Take a beat. T is for take a few deep breaths, to calm down. O is for observe your thoughts and feelings, but without judgment. And P is for proceed with a plan, meaning figure out what you want to do next in a, smart way.
I love it. It's like a little pause button for your emotions.
Exactly. Gives you a chance to choose how you respond instead of just reacting automatically.
So we've talked about EQ for individuals, but what about how it plays out on a team?
Oh yeah, EQ is crucial for teams. Pathway to Work talks about how teams with high EQ are generally more effective, they're more productive.
Makes sense, right? If everyone's on the same page emotionally, things probably run more smoothly.
Totally. They communicate better, collaborate more effectively, and they're better at handling conflict.
Because they get each other.
Right. And this can impact the whole organization too. When leaders have strong EQ, it sets a tone, a culture of being positive and collaborative.
So EQ isn't just some self-improvement thing. It can actually affect a whole company's success.
It really can. And Pathway to Work even gives advice for leaders who want to create a more emotionally intelligent workplace.
Like what kind of advice?
They talk about offering EQ training for employees, making sure there are open communication channels, and recognizing people who demonstrate strong EQ skills.
Oh, so rewarding people for being good at this stuff.
Yeah. And it's important to remember that building EQ is a journey. It's not like you wake up one morning and you're suddenly an EQ master.
It's about constantly working on it.
Exactly. And even small improvements can make a big difference.
So what's your biggest takeaway from Pathway to Work so far?
For me, it's that EQ is not some abstract concept. It's a set of skills anyone can develop, and it can have a huge impact on our lives, both at work and outside of work.
Totally agree. And I love how Pathway to Work gives us real strategies to put this stuff into action.
It really empowers you to take charge of your own emotional intelligence and use it to make your life better.
Now, before we move on, I want to circle back to that claim from Pathway to Work that studies are showing EQ is a better predictor of success than IQ. That's pretty wild. What do you make of that?
It's definitely interesting. We tend to put so much emphasis on IQ, but research is suggesting that EQ might be even more important, especially in jobs that require strong people skills.
So it's not that IQ doesn't matter. It's just that EQ might matter more in today's world.
Exactly. And while we can't change our IQ, we can actively work on developing our EQ.
Now, before we wrap up, I want to touch on that last piece of advice from Pathway to Work, where they encourage listeners to think about a time their emotions affected how they did at work, either positively or negatively, right?
It's such a good exercise, really reflecting on those experiences. It can help you see those patterns, recognize what triggers you, and then start making better choices.
It's like turning your experiences into learning opportunities.
Exactly. It's like, okay, what happened there? How did I react? And what can I do differently next time?
Love it. It's all about learning and growing. All right, we're back, ready to wrap up this deep dive into Pathway to Work and all this awesome EQ stuff. I don't know about you, but I'm feeling pretty pumped about putting all this into practice.
Me too. I think Pathway to Work really nails it. It gives you a solid framework for understanding EQ and actually using it to your advantage.
Totally. And that self-reflection prompt at the end, the one where it asks you to think about a time your emotions, messed with your work, that was a good one.
Yeah, it's powerful stuff. Taking the time to really think about those situations, how your emotions affected your decisions, your actions, everything. It can be a real eye-opener.
It's like hitting the rewind button on your life and watching how you handled things.
Exactly. You start to see those patterns, those moments where maybe you could have handled things differently.
And the more you do that, the better you get at catching yourself in the moment, right? Like, oh, here we go again. I'm about to
Totally lose it.
tell us about.
Right. And then you can use those EQ tools to, like, steer yourself in a better direction.
It all comes back to self-awareness, doesn't it?
It really does.
Yeah.
You can't regulate your emotions if you don't even know what you're feeling in the first place.
Yeah.
And empathy. Forget about it if you haven't taken the time to understand your own emotional landscape.
Makes sense. So journaling, mindfulness, all that stuff, Pathway to Work talks about, those are like the building blocks, right?
Exactly. And what's cool is that these EQ skills, they don't just help you at work. They help you in, like, every part of your life. Your relationships, how you communicate, everything.
It's about being, I don't know, more intentional with your emotions.
Yeah, more mindful, more skillful. It's like Pathway to Work gives you a map for this whole journey of, like, becoming your best self.
And remember that EQ challenge they gave? Paying attention to your emotions at work all week. It's like putting all this knowledge into action.
It's a great way to, like, test it out in the real world.
So as we wrap up, what's one piece of advice from Pathway to Work that you think everyone should take to heart?
For me, it's the idea that emotional intelligence isn't something you're just born with. It's something you can learn and grow no matter where you're starting from.
Yeah, that's huge. It means we all have the power to become more emotionally intelligent.
And that's a pretty amazing thing to think about.
It is. All right, well, I think we've covered a lot of ground today. We've explored the 5 components of EQ, how to build those EQ muscles, and how all of this can impact not just your career, but your whole life.
We've gone deep, that's for sure.
And Pathway to Work gave us a ton of practical advice and tools to put all this into practice.
So, no more excuses. We can all work on our EQ and start seeing those benefits.
Absolutely. A huge thanks to you all for sending in such a fantastic topic, and a Pathway to Work for the awesome insights. We hope you enjoyed this deep dive, and we'll be back soon with more fascinating topics to explore.
Until then, keep learning, keep growing, and keep diving deep.